Translator, Reverie, Editor, Henyi. The towering corpse king immediately struggled to its feet, yet the moment it rose, it collapsed once more, for its other leg had likewise rotted away. It stretched out both arms, attempting to crawl forward across the ground, yet its arms too decayed one after another, crumbling apart, leaving behind only its torso and head. However, its body was also corroding with terrifying speed, the decay climbing upward, first devouring its chest, then its neck, until even its entire head dissolved and vanished without a trace. No! The ninth underworld king and Ronghuan Xuan both cried out in unison. For such a mighty corpse king to actually perish in such a manner. Ha! The Sword King and the other two supreme elites were stunned for an instant, yet immediately afterward they could not help but burst into loud laughter. The great corpse king had truly sought its own doom. Earlier, when it forced its evolution, 16 eyes, 17 eyes, 18 eyes, it was drawing directly upon its own core essence, pushing itself to the ultimate limit, just as one would drain an entire pond merely to catch a few fish. The terrible price it paid was now revealed before everyone's eyes. Its body simply could not endure a realm of such magnitude, and thus it rotted away on the spot. Ling Han allowed a faint smile to appear on his lips, and said calmly, "See, as expected, the heavens will not tolerate it. Ronghuan Xuan, come, let us fight." A battle within the same cultivation tier? Ronghuan Xuan did not dare to fight Ling Han barehanded, even if he were given 10,000 lives. Such an act would be no different from courting death. Within the Thousand Corpse sect, aside from the individual who wielded the demonic noise saber and specialized in the path of martial arts, all the others relied upon corpse soldiers to augment their power. Without the support of formidable corpse soldiers, their true combat strength was in fact rather limited. Ronghuan Xuan merely let out a cold snort. Although he felt pain at the loss of that great corpse king, he had only obtained it by chance, and thus his heart ached only briefly, feeling merely that it was a great pity. However, the ninth underworld king felt a pain that pierced straight to his bones. The Thousand Corpse sect scheme that had spanned several thousand years had ended just like this, and it had even drained every drop of water from the pond of the underworld. To pay such an enormous price only to arrive at this ending, it was like trying to carry water with a sieve. How could he possibly remain calm? Yet no one could possibly believe that the great corpse king had actually died in such a fashion. It was inconceivable and unbelievable, and yet it had happened vividly before their very eyes. No one would suspect Ling Han, a mere spiritual infant tier cultivator, forcing a corpse king into madness until it destroyed itself? Impossible. Since the ninth underworld king was a warrior of the Shattering Void tier, he was naturally a man capable of swift adaptation. The great corpse king had already rotted away beyond saving. He stared at Ronghuan Xuan, and a sinister smile slowly appeared at the corner of his lips. Since that was the case, he would retrieve the 3 lives corpse caskets. Their value was certainly no lower than that of the corpse king. Ninth underworld, where do you think you're going? The beast snake king stepped forward and blocked his path, a faint smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The Sword King extended his hand, and origin power transformed into a gigantic palm that descended from the sky, attempting to seize the 3 lives corpse caskets. The 3 lives corpse caskets were useless to the 5 great sects, but taking them away would deal a devastating blow to the Thousand Corpse sect. Otherwise, once the Thousand Corpse sect gathered all 3 treasures, its might would become incomparably terrifying. Just look. After obtaining the pond of the underworld, the Thousand Corpse sect had already cultivated a 15-eyed corpse king. If that corpse king had not foolishly consumed the wrong medicine and stubbornly forced its evolution toward 18 eyes, how could it possibly have destroyed itself? The 3 lives corpse caskets were like the waters of the pond itself. They could likewise nurture a high-level corpse king in a short period of time. Otherwise, the 5 great sects would never have paid such a dreadful price to eradicate the Thousand Corpse sect in the past. Unfortunately, they had failed to discover the true inheritance of the Thousand Corpse sect, which ultimately allowed this terrifying force to revive once again. Thus, The Sword King naturally wished to take the three lives corpse caskets back to the five great sects and seal them away for eternity. You wish! The ninth Underworld King roared in fury, swinging the demonic noise saber in a violent arc as he struck wildly toward the Beast Snake King. Saber rays split the heavens, shaking the skies with a terrifying presence. This time, he was truly fighting in earnest. Earlier, whether he had clashed with the Azure Phoenix Divine Empress or fought the Beast Snake King head-on, his goal had merely been to delay them. But now the situation had reversed. The Beast Snake King was the one delaying him, and the roles of offense and defense had instantly switched. The ninth Underworld King let out a thunderous battle cry, and the demonic noise saber erupted with a terrifying baleful chi. Wing, wing, wing! The long sword in the Beast Snake King's hand trembled violently, as if it were about to fly from his grasp. Saber heart! The Beast Snake King frowned deeply. How troublesome! After comprehending the heart of martial arts, the most obvious characteristic was the ability to influence the weapons of others, forcing opponents to divert part of their attention to suppress their own weapons, lest those weapons suddenly turn against their masters. This was certainly no trivial matter. Thus, he simply put away his long sword altogether. In any case, he was not an expert in swordsmanship. Curling both hands into claws, he hurled himself toward the ninth Underworld King. His hands shone with an azure metallic luster, and he was actually capable of forcibly withstanding the demonic noise saber with his bare hands. Below them, Ronghuan Xuan turned pale with fright. He hurriedly fled into the three lives corpse caskets, burrowing downward together with the three caskets. Before these three treasured caskets, the earth seemed as fluid as water, and the caskets sank straight down, vanishing completely from sight. Take him down! The ninth Underworld King roared loudly. Everyone was startled. Who exactly was he shouting to? Strangely, a strand of black smoke drifted over from afar and entered the spot where the three lives corpse caskets had disappeared. The Sword King sneered coldly and raised his sword in defense before also plunging straight into the earth. He was far too powerful. With Sword Heart opening the path ahead, no matter how solid the layers of rock were, they were like soft tofu before him, incapable of slowing his movement even for a single moment. However, with that black smoke joining the fray, unexpected complications might arise. It was also an extraordinarily powerful elite. Ling Han could not help but feel his heart stir. That was the Ashura Demon Emperor. That aura was far too familiar. It was precisely the demonic chi he had encountered countless times before. However, that was clearly not the Demon Emperor's double that had been suppressed within the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, but rather one that had emerged from another place entirely. The double within the Devil Sky Mystery Realm had already been thoroughly tricked by Ling Han and could no longer move at all. Yet there were still 8 other mystery realms suppressing the Demon Emperor's doubles. In ancient times, the Demon Emperor had been so powerful that he could not be killed, and thus had been sealed into 9 separate parts. Now, even if only a single double were to escape, it would still be extremely terrifying. Unlike the first double that had attached itself to Ronghuan Xuan's identity, this demon double was evidently absurdly powerful. Already having reached the shattering void tier, it had been used by the ninth Underworld King as his final trump card. Perhaps the skeletal remains of a powerful corpse king had been used as a vessel for the Demon Emperor's soul. In any case, an existence like him could attach itself to virtually anything. The Sword Emperor against the Demon Emperor. Who would prove stronger? In only a short moment, the Sword Emperor burst out from the ground once more. Shaking his head, he said, "I was stopped by a mysterious individual and could not intercept the 3 lives corpse caskets." The ninth Underworld King felt a trace of disappointment, yet he also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. To retrieve the 3 lives corpse caskets from the hands of the 5 great sects and to take them back from Ronghuan Xuan were difficulties on completely different levels. Hey, everyone, we shall meet again in the future. He put away the demonic noise saber and turned around to depart. The Sword King and the other 2 did not attempt to stop him. They could certainly kill the ninth Underworld King if they joined forces. However, an elite of such a level, once pushed into desperation, could drag one of them down with him, even at the cost of his own life. None of them would be able to escape such an outcome. Therefore, unless absolutely necessary, shattering void tier elites would never engage in battles of life and death. The world is about to fall into chaos, the Sword King said in a dull voice. The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress and the Beast Snake King remained silent, yet solemn caution appeared upon their faces. The reappearance of the Thousand Corpse sect, the manifestation of the third killing formation upon someone's body, and now the emergence of another mysterious figure filled with evil intent. Only 100 to 200 years remained before the refining of the realm pill would begin, and each of these elites possessed the power to become a variable in that great event. Translator, Editor Henyi. Those who have passed the first stage of the trial may proceed to report at the Restore Heaven Academy. The Azure Phoenix Divine Empress spoke these few calm words toward the crowd below, her voice clear and majestic like a phoenix cry resounding through the heavens. Then her graceful figure flickered, her robes fluttering lightly as she turned and vanished like a streak of azure flame, disappearing into the clouds. The Sword King and the Beast Snake King likewise moved without delay, their figures flashing as they followed her departure. With their departure, the terrifying oppressive aura that had blanketed the world like a crushing mountain finally dissipated. Instantly, everyone present felt their breathing become smoother and freer. Earlier, with several supreme elites of the Shattering Void tier standing here, every single person had felt as if an enormous boulder had been pressing upon their hearts. Even those who were not the direct targets and who stood separated by several hundred miles from those terrifying existences could only breathe cautiously in shallow breaths. "Let's go. We are heading to the academy." Ling Han had already returned by this time. No one had any idea what he had just done, his actions and his name hidden completely in silence. Regarding the vial of curses, Ling Han had no intention of letting anyone learn of it. Even a 15-eyed corpse king could be cursed to death by it. So which shattering void tier elite would not tremble in fear if they knew of such an object? However, corpse kings were easy to curse, for these creatures possessed no natal horoscope whatsoever. Yet among those great elites who had cultivated their way to the shattering void tier, which one of them had not been blessed by immense destiny and fortune? Not to mention such terrifying figures, even the small Saber King could not be cursed to death. At most, he could only end up in a miserable state after suffering a curse. It was clear that the vial of curses possessed heaven-defying power, but it also came with tremendous restrictions on how it could be used. Everyone soon departed and began traveling toward the Restore Heaven Academy. Because of Thousand Corpse Sect's sudden appearance earlier, the second stage of the examination could only be canceled. Since that was the case, everyone might as well enter the academy together. As for who was truly more talented and outstanding, there would still be plenty of time in the future to determine that. They soon arrived once more at Nine Dragons Mountain and passed through its grand mountain gates. At this moment, a massive formation had already been activated here, concealing the entire Nine Dragons Mountain and transforming it into a vast sea of swirling clouds. Only those who carried the Academy's identity token were able to enter or leave freely. Everyone felt deeply moved by the thoughtfulness of the five great sects. Clearly, the five great sects attached great importance to them, even going so far as to expend enormous effort to construct the Restore Heaven Academy. Ling Han, however, sneered inwardly. This formation had certainly been established several tens of thousands of years ago, perhaps even earlier. Now it had merely been reactivated. As the saying went, history was written by the victors. At this moment, that truth was displayed vividly and completely. The five great sects had clearly been the very murderers who had brought calamity upon the entire world. Yet after 10,000 years of reshaping and brainwashing history, they had become the saviors who rescued the world during its darkest hour. Their shamelessness had truly reached an unprecedented peak. Ling Han did not reveal the true nature of the five great sects to the others. He feared that someone might lose their composure and inadvertently reveal that their lies had been seen through. Only when he possessed absolute strength Would he be able to overturn those 5 towering mountains? With his hands clasped behind his back, Ling Han walked calmly along the broad avenue that stretched beyond the mountain gates. The road extended for more than 10 miles. At the end of the path stood rows of palace halls of modest scale. Under the radiance of magnificent clouds drifting through the sky, those halls appeared like celestial palaces suspended in midair. The spirit chi here is incredibly dense. Yes, it's at least 10 times richer than outside. My heavens! Cultivating here would produce effects no worse than using origin crystals. And the higher you go, the denser the spirit chi becomes. Everyone quickly discovered even more secrets of this place. Delight filled their expressions. When they looked once more at those palace halls floating among the clouds, the expressions on their faces had already changed. The palace halls stood at different elevations, and the density of spirit chi varied accordingly. If one lived in a lower area or a higher area, the difference in cultivation speed could be enormous. Was this the distinction between advanced students and ordinary students? At that very moment, a fierce competitive spirit quietly took root in everyone's hearts. There were only a few dozen palace halls located in the higher regions, which meant that only a few dozen people could occupy them. Shu, an elderly man, suddenly appeared, treading upon the air as though walking on invisible steps. The aura he released carried the unmistakable pressure of the deity transformation tier, causing everyone to halt involuntarily. From this moment forward, all of you are disciples of the Restore Heaven Academy, the old man said. He wore an azure-long robe that had been washed so thoroughly that it shone with cleanliness. Yet it was clearly quite old, the fabric having already faded toward white with age. His gaze swept calmly across the gathered crowd before he continued speaking. You should already have discovered this yourselves. The spirit chi here is extremely dense, and the higher one goes, the richer its quality becomes. However, the Restore Heaven Academy has its own rules. Regardless of your level, you may only cultivate within the area corresponding to your rank. He paused briefly, giving everyone time to digest his words, before continuing. The Academy divides its disciples into 4 ranks according to Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. Heaven grade stands at the highest level, while Yellow grade is the lowest. Heaven grade disciples may reside at the summit, while Yellow grade disciples may only dwell at the foot of the mountain. It will not harm you to know this. The spirit chi at the summit is 10 times denser than the spirit chi at the mountain's base. 10 times! Everyone was instantly shocked. Although an increase in spirit chi density by 10-fold did not necessarily mean cultivation speed would increase by 10-fold, an increase of 1 or 2 times was certainly possible. Normally, even by consuming numerous medicinal pills, one could only increase cultivation speed by 1 to 2 times. What did such an improvement signify? Originally, you would have been divided into these 4 levels according to your scores in the second stage of the examination. But now, everyone is yellow grade. The azure-robed elder chuckled softly. However, there is no need to worry. The old man gestured lightly with his hands and continued. If you wish to become black grade, earth grade, or even heaven grade disciples, it is very simple. You may challenge those ranked above you. Do you see those palace halls? If someone is residing there, you may challenge them. If you win, you may seize their place. Disciples of the 4 ranks not only reside in different locations, but the cultivation resources they receive also differ enormously. Furthermore, heaven grade disciples occasionally have the opportunity to receive lectures from Shattering Void tier elites regarding the profound truths of martial arts. Everyone's hearts were instantly stirred. Those final words were far too tempting. Guidance from Shattering Void tier elites. Even a dull stone might gain enlightenment under such instruction, let alone geniuses like themselves. Then, what happens if someone loses a challenge? Someone asked. Lose? The azure-robed elder revealed a sinister smile. Then naturally, they must bear the consequences. Our Restore Heaven Academy selects geniuses of the present era, future war gods who will pass down the legacy of martial arts. We have no need for useless trash and no need for cowards. A chill crept into everyone's hearts. Bear the consequences? That meant that if someone were crippled or even killed, no one would intervene. Clearly, challenges could not be issued lightly. However, since you did not complete the second round of examinations, quite a number of Earth Grade and Black Grade palace halls remain vacant. You may occupy them without challenging anyone," the azure-robed elder added. Everyone was instantly overjoyed. Those who had already settled here earlier were undoubtedly fierce figures who had been directly admitted into the academy, and defeating them would be extremely difficult. But competing among themselves was a far more manageable matter. Each person may accept at most one challenge per day. If injured, one may apply for meditation to avoid battle for up to 3 months at most, and only twice each year. The azure-robed elder continued. Everyone nodded in agreement. No matter how monstrous a genius someone might be, if they were challenged repeatedly one after another, they would inevitably be defeated. That would make the system completely meaningless. "All right, you may all go." The azure-robed elder waved his sleeve casually before rising into the air and flying toward the summit. Everyone glanced at one another before hastily setting off. They did not run, because before entering, they had already been informed that flying was forbidden within the academy, unless it occurred during battle. Everyone wished to seize the remaining Earth Grade or Black Grade palace halls. Naturally, they moved forward as swiftly as possible. When they finally reached the end of the mountain path, they saw a single person sitting there cross-legged, his eyes tightly closed. He appeared as though he were meditating, or perhaps simply dozing. "Small Saber King," someone suddenly cried out.